The Dream Songs is a coming-of-age romantic drama that begins with high school girl Semi waking up from a strange dream. She can't quite remember the details of the dream, but she has this overwhelming urge to check up on her best friend Hyun, who is currently in the hospital after a minor accident. And as they spend the day with each other, Semi tries to convince Hyun to join her on an upcoming school trip, all while looming thoughts of life and death linger over them. At first, there's a very calm yet contemplative atmosphere as Semi awakens from her dream. The accompanying visuals feel rather hazy, and we're subtly introduced to the underlying themes as Semi finds a dead bird on her way to see Hyun. The movie then takes a more lighthearted turn as the focus is placed almost entirely on their friendship, offering scenes that are very cute and thoughtful as the slow and longer takes effectively capture the youthful but tender intimacy between them, which is simply just adorable to watch for the most part, as Park Hye-Soo does a phenomenal job of displaying Semi's evident infatuation for Hyun through her body language and expressions, whereas Kim Si-Eun nicely exhibits a similar gentle warmth with a more mature composure while carrying a subdued burden. It's an interesting yet delightful approach that emphasizes the teenage experience and viewpoint well, feeling earnest in its depiction while pairing it up with a fun element of exaggerated emotions that tends to come with this age group, making it very easy to bask in this innocent, anxious, and curious youthfulness, as director Cho Hyun-Chul does an incredible job at capturing teenagers as they are, living in the moment, to really bring this story and environment to life. However, while it appears to be a sweet story about teenage angst and young love on the surface, there's also an elusive quality that builds a level of suspense with a darker undertone, alongside symbolic imagery and intriguing motifs scattered throughout. Things like the presence and placement of mirrors, animals, clocks, water, and even food feel rather distinct and really caught my attention, though it may largely go unnoticed or even feel confusing if you're solely wrapped up in the dynamic between Semi and Hyun, which is understandable given their strong chemistry. But it's a very striking aspect of the movie, and as Semi starts to remember fragments of her dream, it slowly begins to paint a much more harrowing picture that isn't fully realized until she remembers her dream in its entirety. And then the weight of the drama and how it's framed in this dreamlike state becomes incredibly profound and melancholic, because there's an element to her dream and all this symbolism that is reflective of a real-life tragedy that occurred in Korea that international viewers may not be familiar with. And I've seen people online suggest that you should be aware of this prior to watching the movie. Now, on one hand, I would agree, as I think it's more impactful and worthwhile to recognize and engage in the importance of what Cho Hyun-Chul set out to do with his direction, and how the real-world elements of Semi's dream further enrich the movie as a whole through the underlying themes, symbolism, and subtle artistic qualities. But on the other hand, I feel like there's a certain blissful ignorance naturally present among these teenagers, and if you can view the movie through their lens, then it feels more hopeful and pure, as there is a lovely and heartfelt story with an endearing romantic angle. So with that being said, I don't want to strip away this layer of innocence for those who may prefer to embrace that ignorance initially and then perhaps revisit and reflect on the movie and Semi's dream with the real-world context in mind, as I think being able to see this movie in two different lights makes it all the more profound. Regardless, I think it's a beautifully made movie overall, as Cho Hyun-Chul conveys the subject matter delicately through a somewhat ambiguous but compelling dreamlike framing with effective cinematography that evokes a relaxed, dreamy, and pensive atmosphere, alongside strong performances that invite you in further as Park Hye-Soo and Kim Si-Eun effortlessly bring their characters to life and create a captivating dynamic between the two. It recently became available to rent and purchase on Prime Video in America, and at the time of this recording, I believe this is the only way to officially watch this movie with English subtitles. However, I must advise that the quality of the subtitles on this release are surprisingly bad, to the point where some lines of dialogue don't make much sense within the context of the current conversation, while certain important on-screen text isn't even subtitled. And for some reason, the character names are sometimes in Chinese instead of Korean. I eventually had to switch to fan-made subtitles I found online that aren't perfect but were mostly better, as I found the subtitles on the Amazon release to be quite distracting. But apart from the unfortunate issue with the current quality of subtitles available, if you're a fan of tender and slower-paced dramas, then I would highly recommend watching this movie.